What's going on, y'all? Dana Polk Jr., Master Executive 8, and this is the continuation of the first part of the video where I was talking about, I believe it's pronounced Moksha, or Maksha, and when I was doing the first part of the video, my phone was low on battery, so it cut off my camera. So I'm just going to continue here, and I was kind of rambling, so I'm just going to get straight to the point. But just saying that, like, my deep down belief is that the whole point of us being here is to end the cycle of death and rebirth. And then in addition to that is also my belief that the body does not have to go back to the ground, and if it does, it can be resurrected. Basically, in no way, shape, or form do we have to die. So, first part is the end of the cycle of death and rebirth. The second part is the translation of the body. So, and it's interesting because as I'm sitting here looking at the excuse me. I'm reading it straight from Wiki. But there's like it almost looks like a boat it has 9 figures sitting in the lotus pose on it. And this looks just like the Ennead that is in the Egyptian mythology with the 9 principles on the boat of Ra. So what is moksha? Also called vimoksha, vimukti, or mukti, and it's a term used in Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism, and Sikhism for various forms of emancipation, enlightenment, liberation, and release. It refers to the freedom from dukkha, or samsara, the cycle of death and rebirth, by the knowledge of the true self, which is Atman Jnana, and it is the lack of a permanent essence and the release from craving and clinging to passions in the mundane mind. In the Hindu traditions, moksha is a central concept and the utmost aim of human life. The other 3 aims being dharma, which is virtuous, proper, and moral life; artha, which is material prosperity, income security, and a means of life; and kama, which is pleasure, sensuality, emotional fulfillment. Together, these 4 concepts are called purusartha in Hinduism. In some schools of Indian religions, moksha is considered equivalent to and used interchangeably with other terms such as vimoksha, vimukti, kavalya, apavarga, mukti, nisrayasa, and nirvana. However, terms such as moksha and nirvana differ and mean different states between various schools of Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. The term nirvana is more common in Buddhism, while moksha is more prevalent in Hinduism. So the etymology of the word moksha is derived from the root muk, which means free, to let go, to release, or liberate. In Vedas and early Upanishads, the word mukyate appears, which means to be set free or release, such as of a horse from its harness. So I'm not going to go through this whole thing. I'm just going to kind of let the spirit guide me through different parts. But the definition and the meaning of moksha, it varies between different Indian schools, Indian religions, and it means the freedom or the liberation from what and how Um, it's also a concept that means liberation from rebirth or samsara. The liberation can be attained while one is earth, or eschatologically. Some Indian traditions have emphasized liberation on concrete ethical action within the world. The liberation is an epistemological transformation that permits one to see the truth and reality behind the fog of ignorance. Moksha has been defined not merely as absence or suffering and release from bondage to samsara. Various schools of Hinduism also explain the concept as presence of the state of Paripurna Brahmanubhava, the experience of oneness with Brahma, the one supreme self, a state of knowledge, peace, and bliss. For example, Vivekat Kudamani, an ancient book on moksha, explains one of the many meditative steps on the path to moksha as beyond caste, creed, family, or lineage, that which is without name and form, beyond merit and demerit, that which is beyond space, time, and sense objects. You are that, God Himself. Meditate this within yourself. So I'm going to skip down to a state of perfection. Many schools of Hinduism, according to Daniel Ingalls, see moksha as a state of perfection. The concept was seen as a natural goal beyond dharma. Moksha in the epics and ancient literature of Hinduism is seen as achievable by the same techniques necessary to practice dharma. Self-discipline is the path to dharma. Moksha is self-discipline that is so perfect that it becomes unconscious or second nature. Dharma is thus a means to moksha. The Samkhya school of Hinduism, for example, suggests that one of the paths to moksha is to magnify one's sattvam. To magnify one's sattvam, one must develop oneself where one's sattvam becomes one's instinctive nature, ultra instinct. Many schools of Hinduism thus understood dharma and moksha as 2 points of a single journey of life, a journey for which the Vedakam was discipline and self-training. Over time, these ideas about moksha were challenged. And then they have the different challenges. So I think I'll go into the challenges on another video. But yeah, just wanted to give a basic understanding of this thing called moksha. You know, this is something I'm just gonna say it, man. I mean, this is something I want to look into. This is deep down inside a longing that I've always had, was to end the cycle of death and rebirth and to translate the body. So I guess my whole goal here was just to share this idea with you and to give you something to think about as far as this idea of reincarnation and how the point is to beat the game and to only reincarnate if you want to. And I would even suggest reincarnating, but not in the sense of losing, not necessarily losing the game, but dying without having ended the cycle, which is beating the game. So like similar to a video game, if you die in a video game without finishing the game, you have to come back and do the game again. But if you beat the game, and the thing I like about video games is they have evolved over time. So before it used to be you know, like say you had an Atari, right, and you you played Asteroid, right? I think they had Asteroid on Atari. I'm not sure. Or let's get something we might all be more familiar with, Sega Genesis or the Nintendo. You know what I mean? You played Mario. When you beat the game, you don't get to start over with the powers that you have. But the new video games, which I think just goes into deeper of the idea of reincarnation. Like for instance, when I first beat the Batman game, Arkham Asylum, when you finish that game, you have the option to just leave the game alone. Boom, you beat the game, you done. You don't have to go back. Or you could start over a new game if you want. You know what I'm saying? But you would still have the knowledge of beating the game. Or you could also start over a new game with all of the powers that you gained from going through the game the first time. And you could also start the game over on a new, harder, difficult level. Because you beat the game, you could kind of got a better idea of how to beat it. So you're now able to do that at a harder state. So I think those are all ways of being able to reincarnate. Like they show it in video games. So yeah, it's my belief that the point is to beat the game. It's also my belief that not only can you beat the game, but you can take the car with you, or you can transfigure the car. You know what I mean? The story of Jesus's resurrection, as well as, you know, because remember, the Bible was put together by a bunch of different mythologies. So like the Jesus story is just a story that goes across a bunch of different mythologies of the resurrection. It's like the body does not have to stay in the ground. It can be transfigured in some sort of fiery form, but it's like cold fusion. You know what I mean? It's like fire. It's not. It's hot, but it's cold. It's like cold hot. You know what I mean? Kind of like that whole idea when Jesus came back and he was like, "Don't touch me." You know what I mean? Probably because you'll fucking burn. You know what I mean? Like you're a walking sun. You know what I mean? You've literally taken the attributes of the sun and now you're this walking star of cold fusion. And like if you touch me, you know what I mean, you might burn. You know what I'm saying? Now I know that a lot of these ancient texts are allegorical. However, I also believe that there are parts that are literal. I mean, especially when you just look at the structure of the universe itself, like everything that seems physical and solid is not really solid. It's just a bunch of different particles vibrating very slowly, which means that this stuff is able to be transmuted, moved around, and molded depending on the magician. And not so much the magician, but the state that the person is in. And I believe that ultimate state is love. You know what I mean? And not the mushy kind of Disney love. You know what I mean? But just a love of the source. And the knowing of the source. And the knowing that you are one with the source. And the knowing that you are the source. You are all. Alright, so this is Dana Polk Jr., Master Executive 8. This is just something that I'm just, you know, I'm no expert on this. Maybe not consciously anyway. So this is something I definitely got to do some study on. I feel like some of the practices that it's talking about, I'm already doing anyway. Like I kind of, you know, this really kind of came yesterday after my meditation. You know, this idea, which really kind of that whole splintering your mind thing, it's been a splinter in the back of my mind, just kind of like, hey, like if you really want this to happen, you kind of got to get on it like ASAP. And the thing that I guess has been not necessarily stopping me, but like bothering me is like this idea of unplugging from the matrix and not being able to do all of the stuff I want to do. But I feel like that's not necessarily the case. I feel like I can do the things I want to do and translate. Like, especially when I look at the story of Enoch or like Joshua per se. Like, they were translated, but shoot, Enoch done started a whole civilization. I mean, he ran a whole civilization, put people in charge before he left and everything. So it's like I feel like I don't necessarily have to not do the things I want to do, but there does at some point have to be this release. You know, even if you look at the end of Enoch's life, like he was up in the mountain, he was away for years. I mean, I don't know what he was doing up there, but he was away for years. And it seems as if he was able to do, you know, the things that needed to be done before he left. So we'll see. You know what I mean? You know, you don't really know that it's necessarily been done until you actually die. You know what I mean? And I think what happens is after the body, you know, dies, you know, at some point that translation happens, and then the body turns into fire, or that cold fusion process. I think this also has to do a lot with the implosion and the science behind the implosion. You know, and I don't know how deep that goes. I don't know if that has to do with the translation of the body too. But I'm going to look to do both. Stop the cycle of death and rebirth and translate the body. And it's just something deep down in me that tells me that I can do that if I think I can. And I figure, what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is I don't, and I still at least overcome that cycle of death and rebirth, or end that cycle of death and rebirth. And from what I'm looking at, like, that's not even necessarily the goal, necessarily, to end the cycle of death and rebirth. The ending of the cycle of death and rebirth and the translation is a result of something. It's not the goal. It's a result of implosion, bliss, living in love. This is Dana Poe Jr., Master Executive 8, and I'm out.